right, Scuffles. Next week we're going to have Robert Ottone as our guest.
Fancy name.
Yes, it is. He is a horror writer and an independent publisher. He owns Spooky House Publishing and is the author of numerous novels and short story collections, such as Wrapped in Plastic, The Curse of the Cobman, and The Vile Thing We Created.
That's neat. And that's great exposition. The audience definitely knows what's going on.
Thanks. The call will be a week from today at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. I need you here at 10 till. You think you can do that?
Sounds like a plan, Stan.
Great. I shall see you then.
1 week later.
Getting ready for the show. Count the Scuffle show.
I need you here at 10 till.
Oh, I forgot. I need to get to Hollywood. Pronto.
Where's Scuffles? It's getting pretty close to time.
Leaving on a jet plane. Not sure if I'll make the interview.
I hate to do this, but I'm gonna have to start without him.
Oh no! I don't want to miss my flight!
Doing my homework on you, doing some research about your work and who you are. I was curious to find out, were you a horror literature fan first, or were you a horror film fan first?
That's a really good question. I've never been asked that question. I think probably a horror literature fan first, because when I was a little kid, my dad would read to me every night. So like that started very early. So I was maybe 2. And I remember my dad reading to me, and then of course, film came not long after. So definitely a fan of like written scariness before filmic scariness.
It's fascinating because it's usually the other way around. For a lot of youngsters, you sort of fall into horror films, but that's a wonderful memory. So your father used to read to you. Do you have any specific memories of anything that he used to read to you? Anything that really sort of planted the seeds of creativity, as it were?
Oh yeah. I remember, the Bunnicula books. I remember, which I actually have it on the street. What, you're freaking out over Bunnicula?
We are probably one of 2 people in the entire world that still remembers Bunnicula.
Bunnicula.
So do I. So do I.
No, the whole reason why I love Dachshunds is because of the Bunnicula series, because of Howie.
Oh, that's awesome. It's just perfect. It's like a great gateway for kids to really explore the spooky stuff, I actually still have this book. I have it on the shelf behind me. It's called Ghosts Don't Eat Potato Chips. That's
the Bailey School Kids.
Yes.
Okay, no, wow, we're kindred spirits, you and I. I mean, I know that, those books came, way later, because, my bedtime stories were more like, the Odyssey by Homer and the Iliad and all that stuff. But that's great that you read that stuff. I very fond memories of when those books came out, reading those. Those are, wow, you've got me down memory lane, so.
Do you remember, I think it was Werewolves Don't Go to Summer Camp?
I do. I remember reading, I read that book. Vampires Don't Read Polka Dots, of course. Dracula Doesn't Drink Pink Lemonade. Leprechauns Don't Play Basketball. I could probably go on and on.
I just loved those books. And then it kind of turned into, I think I was probably in maybe third grade or fourth grade when the Goosebumps books were really starting to pop off.
Mhm.
And my dad would read me those as well. I had my favorites, so like there was always, there's a couple stinkers in there, and that I would always be like, this one's
Mhm.
boring. Go back to the Haunted Mask.
Right.
And he would read those again. But yeah, so it was always books first and short stories first and stuff like that. And then I would try to do my own. I would write my own little short stories and stuff and draw my own comic books. And then it went into film. Like I started watching, I think the first horror movie I ever saw was probably, it had to have been Jaws. And I was probably 4,
Mm.
5.
Jaws was a big influence on you. Do you have any others?
Yeah. It's funny, like, I feel like a kinship with the movies from the 70s for the most part. So there's,
Mhm.
Jaws, and then not long after was Halloween.
Yes.
My wife was making fun of me the other day. I don't realize that I do this, but I have a lot of Halloween stuff in my office. Like you can see right over my shoulder, this like
Mhm.
fake Norman Rockwell kind of thing, and you have like the poster right there from the movie Maniacs action figures and stuff. But I have
Nice.
so much Halloween stuff, and I it just really imprinted on me. I have a rug with Halloween on it. It's so Jaws, then Halloween, and really it kind of stuck around there. As I got a little older, I realized like, The Exorcist certainly and Rosemary's Baby.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just something about those movies from the 70s that I always kind of like go back to. I probably watch Halloween probably north of 10 to 15 times a year. Um,
Mhm.
this Halloween season alone, I watched it 3 times in the month of October.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's just too perfect. I don't know. It's everything I want. I'm even playing, and I never play games on my phone, but there's like a mobile Halloween game that I'm like loving.
Completely unaware of that. Wow.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it would be fun, but it has all the original Carpenter music. They have these like weird little animated sequences. Sheriff Brackett is in it, Dr. Loomis is in it. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's an interesting experiment with a mobile game. It's like one of those match 3 type things.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's bizarre, but it's great and I'm loving it.
Those films sort of inspired or informed your style of writing to an extent?
I think definitely Halloween is a big inspiration. I would say Jaws for sure. A friend of mine who writes horror like jokingly called me like a Steven Spielberg who's seen some stuff. So I like that. Yeah. So yeah, I think like
Yes.
definitely Halloween and Jaws. I would say Exorcist. Like a lot of people kind of forget that like The Exorcist is remarkably funny. Like William Peter Blatty was a comedy writer before he wrote The Exorcist, and he was just super sharp and brilliant with the satire. And all the parts in The Exorcist that I love are the parts where there's like these beautiful kind of like honest interactions between all the characters and sort of loving, very sweet reactions between people, like Lieutenant Kinderman and the priest, Father Karras, just all that stuff is what I always like. And all that kind of stuff had a big influence on my writing for sure.
So
So
I
I
happen
happen
to
to
notice.
notice on your bio the hashtag Team Trauma. So I have to ask. I mean, obviously, do you consider yourself just a fan of Trauma, or is there some sort of affiliation that goes beyond appreciation?
Oh, I've always appreciated Trauma, but I recently, within the past year or so, have been lucky enough to work on a video game for Trauma. Um,
Oh yes, with Mike Fallick.
yes, sir. We worked on Poultrygeist, which is it's more of a
Mhm.
spiritual sequel Poultrygeist, the video game, is more of a spiritual sequel to the movie.
Mhm.
I love Poultrygeist as like preposterous and over the top as it is. But I do enjoy it. I think it might be my favorite trauma movie. But working on the game was a lot of fun because there's so many different outcomes. It's almost like a choose not a choose your own adventure, but maybe more like a Telltale kind of game. If you're familiar with the Telltale games like The Walking Dead, or there's like a
Mm.
Batman Telltale game. They're very similar to that in that you have to make decisions and the decisions kind of branch off down different paths and stuff. So that's sort of where my affiliation with Trauma comes from because we got to make the game and the game is getting ready to come out. You can test it and you can look at some videos and gameplay footage over on Newgrounds right now. If you just type Poultrygeist,
Mhm.
the video game. But it's just been fun. It's been like, I got to take a already like really funny script and add some real terror to it. So that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how
Okay,
that has
well,
turned out.
Wow, what an honor! I will definitely have to. I normally don't do video games, but I'll have to check that out. Uh, I I've been so busy. I haven't had a chance to follow up with Mike in a bit, but I will be sure to pick his brain and see if maybe I can get some free play with that. But
Yeah,
but
I'm sure he'd be happy to share, the game with you and everything. And I'll tell you this, we're going to be doing a podcast. Uh it's going to be Mike, myself, and our friend Rich, he's actually in the game. I'm in the game also.
no, of course, and maybe we'll have to do some sort of like a cross show thingamabobgy. Well, you guys can come on to the Count and Scuffle show, and then we can go on your guys' show. We'll do it that way. That'd be a lot of fun. Like I said, I haven't spoken to Mike in a bit, so it'd be really nice to catch up. But shifting gears just a little bit, um, so I want to be careful because um some folks are a little averse to the term self-publishing, but just for clarification purposes, because I know that you own your own publication. It's Spooky House. So if you own your own publication company, is that considered a form of self-publishing, or is that a completely different sport?
I would say it's a form of self-publishing for sure. My first two collections came out on Spooky House Press, and I'm still very proud of those two collections. And ever since then, like, we've been fortunate enough to publish other people since then. And I've been fortunate enough to, my material has been published by other publishers since then. So what kind of started as like a way to put my own work out there because I just didn't have the confidence to approach any publishers with my stuff, has turned into an opportunity to publish other people. So it's Spooky House Press is fun. It's time consuming, but it's rewarding to see other people's work come to life through it. Um,
Mhm.
we've got 4 wonderful books coming out in 2024. Then we've got at least one for 2025. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and it is, in the beginning, yeah, it absolutely was self-publishing, and that's where it started
Mhm.
because I just didn't know I didn't know any publishers. I didn't know how to get my work seen by publishers, and I was like, well, I could just do this myself. So I did, and it was cool. It was cool, like making my first two collections and sort of like learning the process, and then taking that process and applying it to other people's stuff, like playing jazz with my own work to see what worked, like
Mhm.
promotionally, and then applying, the things that worked and not doing the things that didn't work with other people's stuff. It was good. It's a lot of fun.
It may not necessarily be a simple question, but how does one go about starting their own publishing company.
Yeah, so the laws are different in every state. Here in New York,
Mhm.
the first step is having a lot of money to 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 throw at the state. We're an actual LLC. We have
Mhm.
lawyers on retainer, we have bank accounts, we have the whole nine, but it's also very, it's costly upfront. Like it's a lot of money upfront. So
Yes.
that was the biggest thing was really like, oh, this is going to cost me X amount of dollars, and this is going to cost me X amount of time and hiring the right
Mhm.
people and stuff like that. But yeah, here I registered the LLC. I got all my legal paperwork squared away. I have all the financials squared away. But other than that, it's really pretty simple. I know in some other states you could just do what's called a doing business in name only or doing business as, which is cheaper.
Mhm.
But I wanted to do it the right way.
Right. And speaking of publishing, behind you, you actually have a copy of your latest work, the vile thing we created. And so, tell us a little bit more about that, and also where can we get it to read it?
Yeah, the Vile Thing We Created is probably my biggest book. It's definitely my most widely reviewed, and sales wise, it's my biggest book. It's my sort of, I look at it as like how I work out my feelings regarding having kids.
Mhm.
It's about a young couple who are child free. They have a great life. They're dual income, no kids family. And then they start to kind of realize like their friends are leaving them behind. And sort of in many ways, society is leaving them behind because they don't have children.
Mhm.
So they decide to have children. And unfortunately, it's not the best decision. And all the things that could go wrong do. And it's just, it's my look at caving to societal pressure and the harm that can come from that. But it's also a lot about this couple who they very much love each other. It's not a Rosemary's Baby situation where one partner is gaslighting the other. They're very much in this together. It's told from both of their perspectives. And
Mhm.
it's not as cut and dry as Rosemary's Baby. It's not she doesn't give birth to the devil specifically in this. It's just there's no clear villain, I guess you might say. There is an entity, but it's how you look at it might determine whether or not you believe it to be a villain or not.
It's almost like Eraserhead, but a little less surreal.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. It's a less surreal
Because
Eraserhead, I think. Yeah, that's a good apt way to put it.
Because I've always looked at Eraserhead as an allegory for having a child and being a parent.
Oh yeah.
but that
David Lynch was deathly afraid of being a dad. And then I think his daughter's name
Mhm.
is Jennifer Lynch. She came along and she has a clubbed foot. So he was, you know, all of his feelings about, this perceived deformity that she has, and which is not really a deformity. It's just, the thing that happens.
No, it's right. Oh, by the way, just something, just a little interesting tidbit. Excuse me, an interesting tidbit. I learned this from an episode of Bar Rescue, of all places. Dual income, no kids is an actual marketing acronym. The acronym is DINK. So if you
so if you talk to her,
industry professional and they throw out the word DINK, you know that they're talking about dual income, no kids. It's a very specific market.
I'm very proudly a dink. My wife and I are both very proudly a dink couple. We don't have children. The idea frightens me a lot. It really does. Like the world is not getting much better,
Mhm.
and I have a lot of friends who, during the pandemic, decided to have, some of them had like two kids during the pandemic, and it's like,
Mhm.
oy, and that's great. Whatever. If you're a good parent, that's cool. And thankfully, my friends are pretty good parents, but it's weird to me. It's like throwing a log on a burning building. You know, I just can't.
Right.
I can't imagine bringing new life into this whole scenario. But that's that's my feeling. I don't know. But it's also it's difficult too because like I was having the same feelings that the characters were having in the book. Like a lot of my friends were like, "Oh well, we have kids, and all we do is socialize with other couples who have kids." And it's like, well, I've known you since kindergarten. Like, why, you know, like all of a sudden we don't hang out? It's bizarre, and it's funny. It's really funny too because I just saw them, one of the couples in particular, and he actually like apologized. It was almost like he was an alcoholic making amends. And I was like, I get it, man. You have kids and you're busy. You don't need to apologize for not having people over to party. Like, I get it, dude.
Life happens, as they say.
You're right, and unfortunately in the case of the vile thing we created, life happens and it's a horror novel.
Right.
It's almost like a new category of horror, situational horror. I like that. It's a sitho,
Sitho.
or a sit horror. You can't make it sound G-rated no matter how well you put it. So
It's true.
So, just out of quick curiosity, the girl who fell through the floor and only that you are still sane, are these also released through Spooky House, or are these sort of pre-Spooky House affairs?
Those stories are one of them. The only that you are still sane is a story that was published in a science fiction, I think on a science fiction website. And the girl on the floor was for a thing that Amazon was doing called Kindle Vella, which was you publish a short work and people buy each chapter. And I wanted to explore how that would look. So I put a story on there just to see how it would go. And now both of those stories are actually in my new collection, wrapped in plastic and other sweet nothings. So those both of those stories can be found in that new collection. But yeah, they started. One of them was just a story for a science fiction website, and the other one was a Spooky House production. But The Girl on the Floor is weird. It's probably as close to like me approaching sort of the themes of Poltergeist as I'll ever get. And it's just very bizarre. It's straight up weird fiction.
No, very. Well, that's what was so interesting me to. That's what was so interesting about it for me, and also I have to give you props for only that you are still sane. It read like sci-fi poetry. I was really engrossed with it, and well, it's funny because and it may just be because I'm going back and rereading The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, and it just and maybe it's just because I happen to be reading it simultaneously while I'm reading your. I went through and read some of your short stories. It just I felt like I was reading just good classic sci-fi. That you don't really see a whole lot of that nowadays.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Course.
That's a huge compliment, man. Yeah, I love Bradbury. It's hard to top Bradbury for me. I teach Bradbury. But yeah, I just yeah, that's very kind of you. But yeah, that's the kind of science fiction I like. I like a good, dark science fiction where it's not totally out of the realm of possibility.
Yes.
And especially with Only That You Are Still Sane, I wanted to explore the idea of like, well, if we did discover time travel, what could that be? Like, what would that possibly look like, and what could those outcomes be? And it was really interesting because I did a lot of research into sort of there's like a radiation component for those who read the story, and that kind of radiation apparently is very real, which I did not know that was real. Coronal radiation is apparently a thing. It's like it's radiation in the sense that yes, it can harm you. However, we experience it in such low doses all the time and we just don't know it kind of thing. But if we did experience it in full force, it could kill us. But yeah, it was just really weird. It was like, I love good hard science fiction, but when the hard science fiction is plausible.
You're right.
You're right.
It's
It's
fictitious enough to sort of put your mind at ease, but realistic enough to really scare the pants off of you and drive the point home.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm glad. It's I would like to write more science fiction. I'd like to have more fun in that sandbox.
Well, I would like to read more of your science fiction. and and speaking of more of your works, I have to ask, Curse of the Cobman. Just looking at the cover art, it gave me some serious flashbacks to killer clowns from outer space. So, well, but because you seem to have a sort of eclectic taste within the realm of horror and science fiction. So, like, is that another sandbox that you like to play in? You like to sort of get into sort of, and I mean this endearingly, of course, schlocky kind of horror humor. Because that you could turn that into a trauma film. You could put some really perverse things in it and really get Ben Johnson to direct it, and Bob's your uncle. You've got Trauma's next epic.
I love exploring different things. I love going all over the place. I think it's funny. A lot of people don't realize that William Castle, he made all those great gimmicky horror movies and science fiction movies and stuff like that. But then he also produced Rosemary's Baby. And it's like,
yes.
And he's in Rosemary's Baby. So it's like, you kind of forget, like, he's got great taste. Mel Brooks is a comedy guy. Then he went and produced the remake of The Fly by Cronenberg, so it's just, you got to be able to have fun and play in different sandboxes. Otherwise, this whole writing thing would get boring. If I'm only turning out books like The Vile Thing We Created, that was about a year and a half of writing that. If I'm only doing books like that, I'm going to get bored really quick. So being given the opportunity to write something like Curse of the Cobman, which is really, that's me unleashing how truly bizarre and bloody I can get. That's the bloodiest thing I've ever written. Getting to do that is just an absolute blast. So I'm just very happy that people seem to like it. The cover is insane. The cover is so crazy. It definitely has that B-movie schlocky vibe to it. I think if doing that, my version of that has kind of I wanted it to be a little more epic, like more epic story, because it is about an entire town under siege from this creature. And I wanted to really explore, like, well, what would happen if this town sort of knew what was happening, but wasn't 100% sure. So I got to add in sort of that layer of like, oh my God, like, what is happening here in the town, on top of the incredibly over the top, almost like Suspiria level kills. In my mind, Curse of the Cobman, the blood has glitter in it. That's how crazy and over the top it is.
Wow, that's a beautiful picture. I'd like to see on the silver screen at some point.
Me too.
So Robert,
right. No, so seriously, any film producers out there, read Cobman, and let's get this into motion, please. I don't care, like, if it's Trauma or Full Moon or even The Asylum. Like, let's just get it done.
Yeah, I'm happy with anything. As I just want to get killed. Just whoever makes the movie, kill me on screen. I would love to be murdered, by some sort of monster. Nothing would make me happier.
There shouldn't be a problem. shouldn't be a problem. Well, Robert, I really appreciate your time this evening. This has been a lot of fun for me. So before we wrap up, I want to know, for our audience as well, where can we go to follow all things Robert Ottone, and where can we go to support you and get your work and to actually purchase your books and your short story collection?
Oh, thank you. You can find me on I'm never going to call it X, it's Twitter. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Robert Ottone. And you can find my books on, Amazon and direct from the publishers. Direct from the publishers is actually probably the best way because you keep a small press publisher in business. So, you can go to weirdhousepress.com and get Cobman. You can go to journalstone.com and get my collection. And it's just better to get it direct from them. But I get it. Everybody uses Amazon. I use Amazon too. So you can get all my stuff on there.
We will put all of the links in our show notes page so that folks can check you out and hopefully put some more Cobb on the table because we've got to make sure that they get deranged enough to star in the film adaptation. So
There you go.
Oh man, that Cobb monster is going to be the death of me.
it could be but well, be careful what you wish for. They could be literal or figurative.
And thank you so much again for having me on. I love this. This was fabulous. This was really great. I really appreciate you, taking the time today and chatting and talking about spooky stuff after Halloween, which Halloween lives in my heart all year round. So I love getting to talk about this stuff all the time.
Well, here's the thing.
Even though we'll probably put out a Christmas special at some point,
Halloween.
Sometimes Halloween can be a bit difficult to celebrate. I know that might be a shocking thing to admit, but it's only because I'm a vampire. I live in a perpetual state of Halloween. So it's just it gets frustrating after a while to have to think about things to top just the fact that I live.
But I appreciate that, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
And always know that you have a standing invitation anytime you want to come back on. And I think doing the cross podcast-a-palooza with you, Mike, and Rich sounds like a great idea. So we can talk more about it once we get off air.
Oh my God, that'd be great. Yeah.
All right.
Well, thanks again, Robert, and thank you for watching this evening's Spooks and Spookettes. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have this evening, but be sure to join me next time for yet another feature of fright. Until then, as far as things go, when things go bump in the night, there are such things. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Count, I made it. I'm a little late, but I made it.
Made it where?
To Hollywood.
Oh, Freund. I didn't mean literally. I was just saying that I needed you here virtually.
Uh-oh. Do you think you could pick me up?